Nobody tells you. That's the worst part. They don't pull you aside. They don't send a text. They don't have a conversation with you about it. They just quietly decide. They start responding slower. They stop inviting you. They smile when they see you. But the warmth behind it is gone, and you can feel it, even if you can't name it. And you're left replaying every interaction, trying to figure out what you did wrong. Here's what nobody wants to hear. It probably wasn't one big thing. It was something small, something quiet, something you've been doing for so long it doesn't even feel like a behavior anymore. It just feels like you. And that's exactly why it's so hard to see. Today, we're going into 3 silent behaviors that psychologists have identified as relationship poison. Not the explosive kind, the slow, invisible kind. The kind that costs you friendships, opportunities, and connections, and you never even get a warning. Stay until the end, because the third one, almost nobody recognizes it in themselves, but almost everyone does it. Behavior 1, the subtle one-upper. Imagine this. Your friend just got back from the doctor. Nothing serious, but they've been stressed about it. A weird test result, a few sleepless nights, the specific kind of anxiety that follows you around when something feels uncertain about your own body. They sit down across from you. They start to explain, and before they even finish their second sentence, before they've had a chance to exhale, you say, "Oh, I know exactly how that feels. When I had my health scare back in 2021, I genuinely thought it was over for me. 3 weeks of pure terror. The doctors kept running tests, and every time my phone rang, and just like that, it's your story now." Their worry is still sitting there on the table, untouched, but the conversation has moved on to you. Here's the thing, and this is important. You weren't trying to steal their moment. You were trying to connect. You heard something familiar and you reached for the closest bridge you had. That impulse? It's deeply human. It's actually kind at the root of it. But there's a concept in social psychology called conversational narcissism, first named by sociologist Charles Derber, and it describes exactly this pattern. The unconscious habit of redirecting conversations back toward yourself, not out of arrogance, out of reflex. And here's the psychological machinery underneath it. For many people, sharing their own experience is the only emotional language they were ever taught. In households where you weren't asked how you felt, but you watched adults perform their feelings loudly and constantly, you learned that the way to participate in emotion is to produce it, to match, to offer your version as proof that you understand. But the other person doesn't feel understood. They feel interrupted. And over time, quietly, without drama, they stop bringing you the real things. They keep it surface level. They give you the weather report of their life instead of the actual storm. Because somewhere, without consciously deciding it, they concluded, "This person turns my pain into their story, and I'm tired." Sit with that for a second. When someone shares something vulnerable with you, what happens in your body? Is there a pull, an itch to respond with your own version? To prove you get it by immediately going to yourself. That itch is worth paying attention to. Behavior 2, the quiet critic. This one is almost impossible to catch in real time, because it doesn't announce itself. It's a pause that lasts half a second too long after someone shares their idea. It's the way you tilt your head slightly, not negatively, just questioningly, when someone tells you their plan. It's the that isn't quite neutral. The interesting that somehow communicates the opposite. The smile that arrives a beat too late and leaves a beat too early. Nobody could accuse you of anything. You said nothing wrong. You were practically supportive, but the other person walked away feeling like they'd just failed a test they didn't know they were taking. Psychologists call these microinvalidations, subtle cues that signal disapproval or skepticism without ever stating it directly. And research on nonverbal communication tells us something deeply unsettling. People process these signals faster than conscious thought. Before your brain has formed the sentence, "Something feels off," your nervous system has already logged it, already made a small, quiet note, already started building a case. The quiet critic is almost always someone who grew up in an environment saturated with implied judgment. A parent who never yelled, but whose silence after your report card said everything. A household where love was conditional, but the conditions were never clearly stated. You just had to sense them. And if you were wrong, you felt it. You absorbed that language, and now you speak it fluently, without realizing it. The cruel irony is that quiet critics are often the most sensitive people in the room. They feel everything intensely. They notice every flaw because they were trained to. Their emotional survival once depended on it. But that same hypervigilance, turned outward, becomes a force field that pushes people away. Here's the question worth asking yourself, honestly. Do people seem to hedge around you? Do they qualify everything? This is probably a bad idea, but before they even finish their thought, do they share less over time, not more? If they do, you might be the quiet critic in someone's life, not because you're unkind, but because your face, your pauses, your silences are having a conversation your words never chose to start. And now, the third one, the one almost nobody recognizes in themselves. Picture this, you have a friend, and when you're with them, it's great. You laugh, you go deep, you feel like you've known each other forever. There's a real warmth there, a genuine ease. And then you go home, and then a week passes, 2 weeks, a month. They send a message. Nothing heavy, just a meme, just a, hey, thinking of you, and you see it. You mean to respond. Life gets in the way. 3 days later, you finally reply with something breezy and affectionate, like the silence was nothing, because to you, it kind of was nothing. But here's what was happening on the other side of that silence. Their nervous system, specifically the attachment system, which John Bowlby spent his career mapping, was running a quiet background process the entire time. Am I still safe here? Do I still matter? Was that connection real, or did I imagine it? And every day without a response, that process got louder. This is what psychologists call inconsistent availability, and attachment research is unanimous on how damaging it is. Not because absence itself is cruel, but because unpredictable absence activates the same threat response as outright rejection. The human brain, when it loves something, would rather have consistent pain than inconsistent warmth. At least consistent pain is knowable. It can be adapted to. Inconsistent warmth? That keeps people in a constant low-grade state of alert. And over time, their nervous system makes a decision that their conscious mind never consciously makes. I need to care about this person less for my own survival, and so they do. The tragic part is that the disappearing act almost always belongs to people with the purest intentions. People who assume love is understood, who believe that real connection can survive long silences because they would wait forever for someone they genuinely care about, who are so afraid of being too much that they chronically make themselves too little. They don't disappear because they don't care. They disappear because somewhere, deep and early, they learned that needing people, really needing them, visibly, consistently, tends to end badly. So they made themselves low maintenance. They made themselves easy. They made themselves the friend who never burdens anyone. And in doing so, they accidentally made themselves the friend people eventually stop reaching for. Here's what these 3 behaviors share beneath the surface. None of them are about cruelty. None of them are character flaws in the simple moral sense. Every single one of them is a survival strategy that worked once, maybe for years, and quietly outlived its usefulness. They're not signs that you're a bad person. They're signs that some part of you is still operating from an older, smaller, more frightened version of yourself. And that's both the hard part and the hopeful part, because you can't unlearn what you've never seen, but once you've seen it, really seen it, not just intellectually, but in the pit of your stomach, something shifts. You start to notice the itch to one-up, and you pause. You catch the critical silence, and you choose a word instead. You see the message sitting there, and you reply today, not when it's convenient. Small things, quiet things. But the relationship damage was always done quietly, so the repair can be too. So here's what I want to leave you with. Which one of these is your pattern? Not someone else's. Yours. The one-upper who connects through mirroring, the quiet critic with the loaded silences, the warm, cold ghost who loves people deeply and shows it inconsistently. Leave it in the comments. Not because vulnerability is comfortable, but because the people willing to look at themselves honestly are exactly the kind of people worth knowing.
And if this video gave you something real to sit with, share it with someone, not to call them out, but because this is the kind of insight that changes how you move through rooms, through conversations, through the quiet everyday moments where relationships are actually built or slowly lost. We do this every week. The strange, the uncomfortable, the deeply human. See you in the next one.